The stars looked different from the bridge of Admiral Zekthara's flagship. 3,000 star systems spread out before him like jewels on black cloth. Each one belonged to the Galactic Empire. Each one paid tribute. Each one obeyed. Zekthara had been watching these borders for 50 years. His long, scaled fingers moved across the control panel with practiced ease. The screen showed him everything. No ship could move without his knowledge. No world could rebel without his permission to crush them. "Another quiet day," said his second officer, Kreldan. The younger alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "The outer worlds know better than to test us." Zekthara nodded. It had been 10 years since the last rebellion. The Andromedan colonies had tried to break free. Their cities still glowed with radioactive fire as a reminder to others. Peace was strong because the Empire's fist was stronger. The alarm changed everything. Sharp electronic screams filled the bridge. Red lights flashed across every surface. Officers rushed to their stations while displays showed readings that made no sense. "Report," Zekthara commanded. "Sir, we have a massive space-time distortion," reported the sensor officer. Her voice shook. "Something is coming through hyperspace, but not through any known corridor." Zekthara moved to the main display. What he saw there made his blood run cold. Space itself was tearing open like fabric. Reality bent and twisted in ways that hurt to look at. Energy readings spiked beyond anything in the Imperial database. "Impossible," whispered Kreldan. "No species has that kind of technology." The tear in space grew wider. Lightning that wasn't lightning danced across its edges. Then, from the impossible wound in reality, a ship emerged. It was ugly. That was Zekthara's first thought. Every Imperial ship was a work of art. Smooth curves, crystalline surfaces that caught starlight and made it beautiful. This thing looked like it had been built by someone who had never heard of beauty. The ship was made of metal, crude dark metal that reflected nothing. Its hull was covered in bumps and sharp angles. Weapons stuck out from its sides like thorns on a dead plant. It moved through space like a predator, all power and no grace. "What is that thing?" Kreldan asked. "I don't know," Zekthara replied. "But I intend to find out." On the bridge of the human ship, Captain Jake Murphy stood with his hands behind his back. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. His uniform was simple blue fabric, nothing like the flowing robes of Imperial officers. "Navigator, where are we?" he asked. Lisa Grant checked her instruments. She was young, maybe 30, with short brown hair and fingers that never stopped moving across her controls. "Unknown space, Captain. We're definitely not in the solar system anymore." "That's what we wanted," Murphy said. He looked at the main screen. 12 alien ships hung in space around them. Each one was 3 times the size of his ship. Each one had weapons pointed at him. "Ryan, what do you make of those ships?" Ryan Clark was the weapons officer. He had been a Marine before joining the space program. His hands were steady as he studied the readings. "They're advanced, sir. Energy shields, particle weapons, gravitic drives. But they're not shooting at us yet." "That's something," Murphy said. He turned to his communications officer. "Ben, any word from our new friends?" Ben Torres was working at his station, trying to make sense of the alien signals. "They're broadcasting, on multiple frequencies, Captain. Some kind of computer translation is working. I think they want us to surrender." Murphy almost smiled. "Tell them we come in peace, but we're prepared for war." The message traveled across space at the speed of light. When it reached Zekthara's ship, the translation computers struggled with the alien language. The words were simple, but their meaning was clear. "Arrogant," Kreldan said. "1 ship against 12, they must be insane." Zekthara studied the readings from the alien vessel. "Look at their weapons, Kreldan. What do you see?" The younger officer frowned. "I see nothing that makes sense. No energy weapons, no particle beams. What are those tube-like structures?" "I don't know," Zekthara admitted, "but I don't like them." On the human ship, Chief Engineer Amy Stone was working in the engine room. She was small and quick, with hands that knew every bolt and wire on the ship. The engines hummed around her, Fusion reactors that turned matter into energy and energy into motion. "Captain," she called over the comm system. "The jump drive is completely fried. Whatever we did to get here, we can't do it again." Murphy received the news without expression. He had expected this. The experimental jump drive had been built. With technology they barely understood. Getting home was always going to be a problem. "Understood, Amy. Keep the main engines ready. We might need to move fast." The Imperial fleet began to close in. Standard procedure was simple. Surround the unknown vessel. Demand surrender. If they refused, disable their engines and take them prisoner. If they still refused, destroy them. It had worked for 1,000 years. "Open a channel," Zekthara ordered. "All frequencies." The message that went out was recorded in the Imperial databases as Standard First Contact Protocol 7. It had been used successfully on over 300 species. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Imperial space without permission. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction. The Empire is merciful to those who submit quickly." On the human bridge, Ben Torres translated the message. Murphy listened without changing expression. "Captain," Lisa Grant said quietly, "I'm reading massive energy buildups on those ships. They're charging weapons." "I see it," Murphy replied. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth. He knew the signs of an enemy preparing to attack. "Ben, send them a message." "What should I tell them, sir?" Murphy looked at the alien ships surrounding his vessel. He thought about Earth, 300 light-years away. He thought about his crew who had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never return. He thought about humanity's first steps into a galaxy that seemed determined to crush them. "Tell them this is Captain Jake Murphy of the United Nations, Ship Defiance. Tell them we come in peace, but we are prepared for war. Tell them we will not surrender." The message traveled across space and reached Admiral Zekthara's ship. The translation computers worked for several seconds before displaying the alien words. Zekthara read the message twice. In 1,000 years, no species had ever responded to Imperial demands with such simple defiance. Most begged for mercy. Some tried to negotiate. A few attempted to run. None had ever said they were prepared for war. "Sir," Kreldan said, "what are your orders?" Zekthara looked at the readings from the alien ship. Its weapons were still a mystery. Its technology was primitive but somehow wrong. Its crew was either very brave or very stupid. "Follow protocol," he said finally. "Disable their engines. If they resist, destroy them." The Imperial ships moved closer, their weapons charging with deadly light. In the depths of space, 2 civilizations prepared to meet for the first time. Neither knew that. This moment would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Zekthara watched his fleet move into attack formation. 12 Imperial cruisers surrounded the alien ship like hunters circling wounded prey. Each cruiser carried enough firepower to destroy a city. Together, they could crack a planet's crust. The alien ship sat motionless in space. It made no attempt to run. Its weapons remained powered but not aimed. Zekthara had seen this before. Some species froze with fear when they realized how outmatched they were. "Target their engines," he ordered. "Ion cannons only. We want prisoners to question." The Imperial ships fired blue beams of pure energy. Ion cannons were perfect for disabling primitive vessels. They shut down electrical systems without causing permanent damage. Every species in the galaxy used some form of electronics. The ion beams would leave the alien ship helpless and drifting. On the bridge of the Defiance, warning lights flashed as the ion beams struck the hull. Captain Murphy felt the ship shake slightly, but the lights stayed on. The engines kept humming. "Report," he called out. Amy Stone's voice came from the engine room. "No damage, Captain. Those energy beams did nothing to our systems." Murphy nodded. Earth's military had learned hard lessons about electromagnetic warfare. Every system on the Defiance was hardened against nuclear electromagnetic pulses. The alien ion weapons were powerful, but they worked like a massive electromagnetic pulse. Human technology had been built to survive much worse. "They'll try something else now, Ryan," Clark said from his weapon station. "I'm reading massive power buildups on their ships." "Prepare for combat," Murphy ordered. All hands to battle stations. Throughout the ship, red lights began flashing. Blast doors sealed shut. The crew strapped themselves into their chairs. In the Marine quarters, Lieutenant Colonel Sam Davis suited up his troops for possible boarding actions. Admiral Zekathara stared at his displays in confusion. The ion cannons should have shut down every system on the alien ship. Instead, the vessel showed no signs of damage. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "the alien ship appears to be unaffected by our ion bombardment." "Impossible," Kreldan said. "Nothing can resist ion cannons at that intensity." Zekthara's scaled fingers drummed against his command chair. In 50 years of service, he had never seen technology that could simply ignore Imperial weapons. Either these aliens had shields, beyond anything in the Imperial database, or their technology worked in ways he didn't understand. "Use tractor beams," he commanded. "Pull them in for boarding." The Imperial flagship extended invisible fingers of force toward the human ship. Tractor beams were the Empire's favorite tool for capturing enemy vessels. The gravitational fields could drag even the largest ships across space like toys. Captain Murphy felt his ship lurch as the alien tractor beam grabbed hold. Through the viewscreen, he could see the Imperial flagship growing larger as they were pulled toward it. "Distance to target?" he asked. Lisa Grant checked her readings. 2,000 kilometers and closing fast. Murphy turned to his weapons officer. "Ryan, show them what human weapons can do." Ryan Clark's fingers moved across his controls. The Defiance carried weapons that no other species in the galaxy used. Nuclear missiles, railguns that fired solid metal at incredible speeds, and something special that the engineers had built just for this mission. "Firing nuclear missiles," Ryan announced. 20 missiles erupted from the Defiance's launch tubes. Each one carried a 50-megaton warhead. They accelerated toward the Imperial ships at speeds that confused alien sensors. The missiles were primitive by galactic standards, using simple chemical rockets instead of exotic matter drives. But they were fast, and they were deadly. The Imperial fleet's point defense systems tried to intercept the missiles. Laser beams and particle weapons fired at the incoming warheads. Some missiles exploded in brilliant flashes of light, but others got through. The first nuclear warhead detonated against the shields of an Imperial cruiser. The explosion was like a small star being born and dying in seconds. White light filled space. Radiation washed over nearby ships. The Imperial cruiser's shields held, but barely. Warning alarms screamed across its bridge as systems overloaded. The ship's elegant curves were scorched black. Its crew stared in shock at damage readings they had never seen before. "What was that?" Kreldan whispered. Before anyone could answer, the railguns fired. The Defiance carried 6 railgun turrets. Each one could accelerate a solid metal projectile to 10% of light speed. The projectiles were simple chunks of tungsten, no fancy technology involved. But when something that heavy moved that fast, it became devastating. The railgun rounds hit the Imperial ships like hammers striking glass. Energy shields that could stop particle beams and laser fire meant nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The projectiles punched through shields, through armor, through entire ships. One Imperial cruiser took a direct hit to its engine section. The tungsten projectile went in one side and out the other, leaving a hole large enough to fly a fighter through. Atmosphere rushed out into space. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, but the damage was done. The ship was crippled. Admiral Zekthara watched in horror as his perfectly ordered fleet fell into chaos. 2 ships were badly damaged. His own flagship was still pulling the alien vessel closer with tractor beams, but now he wasn't sure he wanted it nearby. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien ship." "Put it through," Zekthara commanded. Captain Murphy's face appeared on the Imperial viewscreen. He looked calm despite the battle raging around him. His uniform was neat, his voice steady. "This is Captain Jake Murphy of the United Nations ship Defiance," he said. "I warned you that we come in peace but are prepared for war. Release your tractor beam and withdraw your ships. This is your only warning." Zekthara felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. This alien captain showed no respect for Imperial power. He spoke to the admiral of the border fleet, as if they were equals. You are outnumbered 12-1, Zekthara replied. Surrender now and your crew will be treated well. Murphy's expression didn't change. Admiral, you've just learned that your ion weapons don't work on us. Your shields can't stop our weapons. And right now, we're close enough to your flagship. To end this conversation permanently, I suggest you reconsider. The human ship was now only 500 kilometers away, still being pulled in by the tractor beam. At this range, even the most primitive weapons could cause serious damage. Zekthara looked at his tactical display. His fleet still outnumbered the aliens, but 2 ships were out of action. The alien weapons were unlike anything in Imperial records. Their ship seemed immune to standard Imperial weapons, but retreat was unthinkable. No admiral had ever retreated from a single enemy ship. The political consequences would be devastating. All ships, he commanded, open fire with everything we have. Destroy that vessel. The Imperial fleet unleashed hell. Particle beams, plasma cannons, gravity disruptors, and quantum torpedoes all fired at once. Space lit up like a festival of destruction. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement. The human ship disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma and exotic radiation. For a moment, silence filled the Imperial bridges. Then cheers began. The alien ship was gone. Imperial superiority was restored. The cheers died when the plasma cleared. The Defiance emerged from the firestorm, its hull glowing red-hot but intact. Armor plates were melted and twisted, but the ship was still fighting. Still dangerous. Impossible, Kreldan breathed. Captain Murphy's voice came over the communication system again. This time he didn't sound calm. He sounded angry. You fired. First, he said. That makes this a war. The human ship's weapons came online all at once. Nuclear missiles launched in waves. Railguns charged with deadly energy. And something new appeared on Imperial sensors. The humans were launching small objects that accelerated to incredible speeds. Kinetic kill vehicles. Chunks of metal designed to ram enemy ships at relativistic velocities. The Imperial fleet scattered as death rained down upon them. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for centuries found themselves running from a primitive vessel that should have been destroyed in the first exchange. Admiral Zekthara gripped his command chair as his flagship shook under impact. Around him, officers worked frantically to coordinate the retreat. But in the back of his mind, one thought kept repeating. These humans were not like other species. They did not surrender. They did not beg for mercy. They fought back. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Imperial communication networks carried the impossible story to every corner of the Empire. A single alien ship had fought 12 Imperial cruisers and won. 2 Imperial vessels were destroyed. The rest had retreated. On the capital world of the Empire, Grand Chancellor Vexmore read the report 3 times before believing it. His forearms trembled as he held the datapad. In 3,000 years of Imperial history, no single ship had ever defeated an entire Imperial fleet. Find Admiral Vorgash, he commanded his aide. Tell him to prepare the 3rd battle fleet. I want that alien ship destroyed. Admiral Vorgash was known throughout the Empire as the Crusher of Worlds. He had put down 17 rebellions in his career. Entire species had learned to fear his name. When worlds heard that Vorgash was coming, they usually surrendered before he arrived. The admiral stood in the war room of his flagship, studying holographic displays of the alien vessel. 50 ships of the 3rd battle fleet surrounded him. In space, the largest force assembled in decades. Primitive technology, he said to his staff officers. Crude weapons, chemical rockets and metal projectiles. How did they defeat Admiral Zekthara? His intelligence officer, a thin alien with large eyes, spoke carefully. Sir, their weapons appear to be kinetic rather than energy-based. Our shields are designed to stop particle beams and plasma. Solid projectiles at high velocity seem to penetrate them easily. Vorgash waved a dismissive hand. Then we adapt, increase shield density, add particle screens. 1 ship cannot stand against 50. But across the galaxy, something else was happening. On the mining world of Keltar Prime, enslaved workers gathered in secret. They had heard about the human ship that refused to surrender. For the first time in generations, they began to hope. "Did you hear?" whispered Gralmec to his fellow miners. "The humans told the Empire no, and they lived." Similar conversations were taking place on 1,000 worlds. Species that had been conquered centuries ago began to remember what freedom felt like. The Empire's absolute power suddenly seemed less absolute. Captain Murphy stood on the bridge of the Defiance, studying star charts they had taken from the destroyed Imperial ships. The human vessel bore scars from the battle. Hull plates were melted and twisted. Several weapon systems were damaged, but the ship was still fighting. "Where are we now, Lisa?" he asked his navigator. Lisa Grant worked at her station, comparing the alien star maps with their own readings. "Deep in Imperial space, Captain, at least 500 light-years from the border." Murphy nodded. They had been moving through Imperial territory for 2 weeks, avoiding patrol fleets and gathering intelligence. What they had learned horrified them. The Empire controlled thousands of worlds. Billions of beings lived as slaves, their entire civilizations crushed under Imperial rule. "Captain," Ben Torres called from communications, "I'm picking up Imperial fleet movement. Something big is headed our way." Ryan Clark checked his weapons displays. "We're down to 60% ammunition, sir. The last battle used up most of our nuclear missiles." Amy Stone's voice came from the engine room. "The jump drive is still dead, Captain. We're stuck here until I can find replacement parts." Murphy considered their situation. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in enemy territory. By all military logic, they should find a place to hide and wait for rescue. But Captain Murphy had not brought humanity's first starship across the galaxy to hide. "Set course for the Calaris system," he ordered. "Intelligence reports show a major Imperial shipyard there. If we're going to make a statement, let's make it count." The Calaris system was one of the Empire's major industrial centers. Massive orbital shipyards built the cruisers and battleships that kept the galaxy in line. Thousands of workers, mostly slaves from conquered worlds, labored to build instruments of their own oppression. Admiral Vorgash arrived at Calaris 3 days before the humans. His 50 ships took position around the shipyards, using them as bait. When the alien vessel appeared, it would be trapped. "Let them come," Vorgash said. "This time, they will not escape." The Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Calaris system. Immediately, alarms began sounding on Imperial ships throughout the system. 50 ships, Lisa Grant reported, all in defensive positions around the shipyards. Murphy studied the tactical display. The Imperial fleet was spread out in a perfect defensive formation. Every approach to the shipyards was covered. It was a trap, and everyone knew it. "Captain," Sam Davis said from his Marine station, "we could try hit-and-run tactics, strike fast and get out before they can respond." Murphy shook his head. "Look at those shipyards, Sam. Look at the life signs. Thousands of people are working. There, slaves building ships for their masters." Ryan Clark understood first. "You want to free them." "I want to give them a chance to free themselves," Murphy corrected. "Ben, can you break into their communication networks?" Ben Torres worked at his station for several minutes. "I'm in, Captain. I can broadcast on all frequencies throughout the system." Murphy moved to stand in front of the main view screen. He thought about what he wanted to say. These words would be heard across the galaxy. They might be humanity's last message to the stars. "This is Captain Jake Murphy of the United Nations ship Defiance," he began. "I'm speaking to every person in this system who dreams of freedom. The Empire tells you that resistance is hopeless. They say their power cannot be broken. They are wrong." His voice carried across space to every ship, every station, every world in the system. In the slave quarters of the orbital shipyards, workers stopped their labor to listen. "We are 1 ship against 50, Murphy continued. "By every military calculation, we should lose. But we have something the Empire doesn't understand. We fight not for conquest, but for freedom, not for power, but for the right to choose our own destiny." On the shipyards, a Rigelian named Talrexa listened to the human captain's words. He had been a slave for 20 years, building ships for the Empire that had destroyed his world. Beside him, other workers from a dozen species began to gather. "The Empire's strength comes from your fear," Murphy said, But fear is a choice. Today, you can choose differently. Today, you can choose to fight. Admiral Vorgash watched the alien transmission with growing alarm. Across his tactical displays, he could see unrest beginning on the orbital platforms. Workers were abandoning their posts. Some were moving toward the weapons storage areas. All ships, he commanded, prepare to fire on the orbital platforms. We cannot allow a slave revolt. But his order came too late. On Platform 7, Talrexa and his fellow workers had broken into the armory. Ancient weapons stored for emergencies were distributed among beings who had dreamed of this moment for decades. For freedom, Talrexa shouted, and his cry was taken up by thousands of voices. The orbital shipyards exploded into revolution. Slaves attacked their overseers. Security forces found themselves outnumbered 100 to 1. Emergency bulkheads sealed as different. Sections of the platforms declared independence. Admiral Vorgash faced an impossible choice. He could fire on the platforms and destroy the Empire's industrial capacity, or he could try to retake them with ground forces while the alien ship remained free to attack. Captain Murphy watched the uprising begin with satisfaction. Now, he told his crew, while they're distracted. The Defiance accelerated toward the Imperial fleet at maximum speed. Nuclear missiles launched in waves, targeting the ships closest to the orbital platforms. The Imperial fleet, caught between the human attack and the slave revolt, began to fracture. Some ships moved to suppress the uprising. Others turned to face the human threat. In the confusion, coordination broke down. The perfect defensive formation collapsed into chaos. "This is it," Murphy said quietly. "This is how empires fall. Not all at once, but one choice at a time. One person deciding they've had enough." Around him, his crew worked with desperate efficiency. They were still outnumbered. They were still outgunned. But across the galaxy, the impossible was happening. People were choosing freedom over fear, and that choice was spreading faster than the Empire could contain it. The Battle of Calaris raged for 6 hours. Captain Murphy watched from the bridge of the Defiance as chaos spread through the Imperial fleet. 50 warships fought not just one human vessel, but thousands of freed slaves on the orbital platforms. Talrexa led his fellow workers through the corridors of Platform 7. They had captured the weapons depot and now held half the station. Around them, explosions shook the metal walls as Imperial Marines tried to retake control. "The humans are fighting for us," Talrexa shouted to his followers. "We fight for ourselves." They pushed forward, driving back the Imperial forces. These workers knew every pipe, every passage, every weak point on the platform. The Marines were trained for battle, but they were fighting on ground that belonged to their enemies. Admiral Vorgash stood on his flagship bridge, watching his perfect battle plan fall apart. Half his ships were firing on the orbital platforms, trying to stop the slave revolt. The other half were chasing the human ship through the asteroid field that surrounded Calaris. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost contact with platforms 3, 7, and 12. The slaves have control." Vorgash slammed his fist against his command chair. "Then destroy the platforms. We cannot allow this revolt to spread." "Sir, those platforms build our ships if we destroy them. If we don't destroy them, the Empire falls," Vorgash snapped. "Fire." The Imperial ships turned their weapons on the orbital platforms. Particle beams and plasma cannons struck the industrial stations. Metal melted and atmosphere rushed out into space. But the platforms were huge, built to survive asteroid impacts and solar storms. They absorbed terrible damage and kept fighting. On Platform 7, Talrexa felt the station shake as weapons fire struck the outer hull. Emergency lights flashed red. The artificial gravity flickered. "They're trying to destroy us," someone shouted. "Then we destroy them first," Talrexa replied. He turned to the weapons control station. Platform 7 had defensive guns, old but functional. "Can anyone work these controls?" A young Andromedan female stepped forward. "I helped build these systems. I know how they work." Her name was Kiravel, and she had been a slave for 15 years. Her hands moved across the controls with bitter knowledge. Every weapon system she activated had been built by slaves like herself. "Targeting the flagship," she announced. The platform's guns turned toward Admiral Vorgash's ship. They were not military weapons, just mining lasers and debris clearers, but when hundreds of them fired together, they became something else entirely. The Imperial flagship's shields flared as dozens of beams struck its hull. Vorgash staggered as his ship shook under the unexpected attack. "The platforms are firing. On us," his weapons officer reported. "I can see that," Vorgash snarled. "Return fire. All ships concentrate on Platform 7. But as the Imperial fleet focused on the rebellious platform, Captain Murphy saw his chance. The Defiance accelerated out of the asteroid field, its remaining nuclear missiles armed and ready. "Target their flagship," Murphy ordered. Ryan Clark locked onto Admiral Vorgash's ship. Missiles away. 20 nuclear warheads streaked across space toward the Imperial flagship. Point defense systems tried to intercept them, but the ship was already damaged from platform fire. Half the missiles got through. Nuclear fire bloomed against the flagship's hull. The ship's elegant curves were burned black, its shields collapsed. Atmosphere leaked from dozens of holes. Admiral Vorgash found himself floating in zero gravity as the artificial gravity failed. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to restore power. "Damage report," he gasped. "Main engines offline. Weapons at 30%. Life support failing." For the first time in his career, the Crusher of Worlds faced defeat. His flagship was crippled. His fleet was scattered between fighting the human ship and suppressing slave revolts. The carefully planned trap had become a disaster. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Slave revolts have begun on 47 worlds. The humans' message is spreading." Vorgash closed his eyes. The Empire had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. But fear was a fragile thing. Once broken, it was almost impossible to rebuild. Captain Murphy stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the Imperial fleet retreat. His ship was badly damaged. They had used the last of their nuclear missiles. The hull was scorched and twisted from energy weapon hits. But they had won. "Captain," Ben Torres reported, "I'm receiving transmissions from freed slaves across the system. They're asking for instructions." Murphy thought about his answer carefully. These people had spent decades or centuries under Imperial rule. They would need time to learn how to be free. "Tell them this," he said finally. "Freedom is not something we can give you. It's something you must take and keep for yourselves. But you are no longer alone. Help is coming." As he spoke, new ships began appearing at the edge of the system. Not Imperial vessels, but crewed fighters and converted freighters. Ships built by freed slaves on other worlds who had heard the call to rebellion. The revolt was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. World after world was throwing off Imperial rule. The galaxy's oppressed peoples were discovering that the Empire could be beaten. Amy Stone's voice came from the engine room. "Captain, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I figured out how to repair the jump drive using parts from the captured Imperial ships. The bad news is it will only work once." Murphy nodded. "One jump. Enough to get home if they were lucky." "How long do you need?" he asked. 6 hours, maybe 8. "But Captain, there's something else. I've been studying Imperial technology. Their hyperspace drives, their shield generators, their weapon systems, they're all based on the same principles." "What principles?" "Energy manipulation and exotic matter. Very advanced, very efficient. But they have a fundamental weakness. They assume their enemies will use similar technology." Murphy began to understand. "But we don't." "Exactly. Our weapons are kinetic. Our engines are fusion-based. Our electronics are hardened against electromagnetic pulses. We're using technology they've never encountered before." It explained everything. Why the Imperial weapons couldn't disable human systems. Why human weapons could penetrate Imperial shields. Why a single primitive ship could defeat advanced alien fleets. "There's more," Amy continued. "I've been analyzing their communication networks. The Empire isn't as united as they pretend. There are fractures, competing factions, worlds that joined only because they had no choice." Murphy smiled for the first time in weeks. "And now they have a choice. The repairs took 10 hours instead of 8. During that time, More rebel ships arrived. Former Imperial colonies brought their own vessels to join the growing fleet. The single human ship had become the center of a galactic revolution. When the Defiance was ready to jump, Captain Murphy stood before a crowd of freed beings from dozens of species. They filled the cargo holds of ships throughout the system, all waiting to hear what the human captain would say. "This is not the end," Murphy told them. "This is the beginning. The Empire will fight back. They will try to crush this rebellion, like they crushed others before. But this time is different." He paused, looking at the faces around him. Some were human-like, others completely alien, but all shared the same expression: hope. "This time, you are not alone. Earth is coming. Humanity is coming. And we bring something the Empire has never faced before. We bring the promise that every thinking being has the right to be free." The jump drive activated, tearing reality open like fabric. The Defiance disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its crew toward home. Behind them, the galaxy burned with revolution. The Galactic Empire, which had ruled for 3,000 years, began to crumble as world after world chose freedom over fear. The age of tyranny was ending. The age of liberty had begun. And somewhere in hyperspace, a small human ship carried the news toward Earth, where humanity waited to learn that they were no longer alone in the universe. They were part of something much larger, something that would change the galaxy forever.